everything New Orleans Pelicans from a fan's perspective. 27 points, 5 rebounds. Welcome to Pelicans Flock Report, where I give you everything New Orleans Pelicans from a fan's perspective. I'm your host, D. Broussard. And before I get started, man, like always, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. You don't want to miss it. The all-new Pelicans Flock Report. Shout out to everybody that's already subscribed, man. I really appreciate y'all out there, man. And as long as y'all keep subscribing, I'm going to keep bringing y'all these videos, man. Have the Pelicans finally found their identity? That's a huge question, because the way things have been looking here lately, it's starting to look like we may be finding our identity. Now, we've been more physical, we've been more aggressive, we've been having more of a defensive presence, and also we've been more disruptive on the ball. And I feel like a lot of that has come from the return of Dejounte Murray. Now, Dejounte Murray, in this last game against the Houston Rockets, he had 35 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists. Ultimately, a good game for Dejounte Murray. Now, I feel like the fact that Dejounte Murray brings leadership, defensive presence, and also playmaking ability, I feel like since Dejounte has returned, this team has ultimately turned around, and the team is definitely headed in a different direction. And I think that, you know, Dejounte has to be a huge part of that success here lately. Now, the Pelicans have won the last 9 or 14 games, and ultimately we have 16 more games left in the season. And I think that um, a lot of that has come from the return of Dejounte Murray. And ultimately, it makes you think, what if Dejounte was healthy a little bit earlier in the season? I really feel like this team would have been totally different. And we may have been possibly top 5 in the West, especially with the way that we've been playing here lately. So I think that, we definitely got a good thing going, with Dejounte Murray coming back, man. Ultimately, man, coaching as well. James Borrego has done a really good job with this team. A lot of people feel like, James might not be the guy. James is the guy. We really don't know what's going to be the outcome of James' situation, because he still has that interim coach title on his name right now. But I feel like going forward into the future, um, you know, keeping James Borrego is very, very important. Now, James has been going with this small ball lineup. As I said, we've won, the last 9 out of 14 games. Now this small ball lineup helps us outscore opponents, which we have. We've been outscoring opponents 2.3 points per every 100 point. It also gives us defensive versatility, and also it gives us the ability to space and pace, um, which is really difficult for certain teams to defend. So I myself, as I said already, I'm not a huge fan of the small ball lineup, but I mean, hey, like I said, statistically, it's showing that it has been working, and in order for us to continue to build and find the identity, the most important thing, in my opinion, is going to be keeping James Borrego. Now, it's like I said, some feel like that might not be the right move, but I mean, hey, I've always been a huge advocate for James Borrego and the job he's done with this basketball team, holding guys accountable. We've seen it with, Jordan Poole, where, Jordan Poole hasn't played that much. You know, he's been held accountable, and also, we seen him go with the right guys that fit his style of play. And I feel like, Jordan Poole just doesn't fit James Borrego's style of play, and that's ultimately why he hasn't been playing. The same thing with Kevon Looney. It's not just Jordan Poole, but it's also Kevon Looney. We brought Kevon Looney in as a free agent, signed him to an $8 million deal. Like I said, it was supposed to be a huge uh, uh, acquisition, but ultimately, it hasn't really worked out because Kavon hadn't really played that many games this season. And, like I said, a lot of that is because, James Borrego is trying to, implement his style on this basketball team. And ultimately, it's been working. It's been working out. As I said in the last video, the game against the Houston Rockets, I felt like we were robbed out of that game. Some might disagree, but I mean, I watched the game. I just think that the foul call was supposed to be made before Dejounte stepped out of bounds. It wasn't. And, ultimately that helped the Rockets, you know, get the W. But overall, I feel like in these last couple games, James Borrego has done, a heck of a job. And a lot of it has been due to this small ball lineup. So I think keeping James Borrego on this team is, very, very important. And we'll see what happens with that. Also, the presence of Herb Jones. Herb Jones, especially going with this small ball lineup, Herb Jones has been, a really huge factor, you know, defending a lot of the star players on opposite teams. Now, we saw him defending KD against Houston. Now, obviously, that's going to be a nightmare of a matchup for her because, KD is, 7 feet tall. But, ultimately, I think that Herb done a pretty good job, against KD. But he did a really good job, in my opinion, against Brandon Ingram in the previous game against the Toronto Raptors. So, a lot of our success, I would say, has come from the presence of Herb Jones on the defensive end, being disruptive, being physical, being aggressive, and just creating an overall defensive presence, against our opponents. So, Herb Jones has definitely, made a huge difference on this basketball team going forward. So, as long as Herb is playing the way he's playing, I think we'll be okay. Now, in this next game, we'll be going against the Dallas Mavericks in Dallas on tomorrow. Dallas is ahead of us right now in the current standings. They're sitting at number 12. We're currently 13. And, if we're going to make a play-in push, this is a game that we definitely going to have to win. If we're going to try to make a play-in push and try to get into that 10th seed spot to where we can possibly make the play-in. Now, I think that is still some possibility that we may be able to do it, especially with the way that we've been playing. And, we're starting to hit stride kind of like at the right time. But, that's yet to be seen. Will it happen? Will it won't happen? Or, we don't know. But, like I said, we got 16 games left. And, if we can play the way we've been playing in these next 16 games, I think it's definitely going to give us an opportunity to possibly get into that 10th spot, man. And, maybe make a play in, make the play in tournament and, you know, get in the playoffs. Who's to say, can't never give up hope, man. Some people are already saying the season is over with, I know how everybody feeling out there. But I mean, hey, the standings is the standings, and right now we currently sitting at 13. And I mean, all you gotta do is make it to the 10th spot to get into the play in, at the end of the season. So I mean, hey, it's still a chance, we'll see, but it's still a chance. So yeah, man, we'll be going up against the Dallas Mavericks in this next game. And yeah, man. So that's it for me, man. Like always, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. The All New Pelicans Flock Report. I'm your host, D. Broussard. You don't want to miss it. Shout out to everybody that's already subscribed, man. I really appreciate y'all out there. And until next time, man, I'll be back after this Dallas Mavericks game to break down and give you guys my reaction on the game afterwards. So make sure y'all tune in, man. Pelicans Flock Report. I'm out.